The Millionaire CEO mocked his unfashionable employee, but when she showed up at the gala, he was left in awe. The conference room at Carter Enterprises was immaculate, modern, and filled with some of the sharpest business minds in the industry. The employees sat in crisp suits, designer dresses, and polished shoes, all except one. Emma Brooks. She sat at the far end of the long, glossy table, her simple beige sweater slightly worn at the edges, her black skirt plain and unremarkable. Unlike her colleagues, she didn't wear designer labels or carry a luxury handbag. And Nicholas Carter, the CEO of the company, noticed. He always noticed. Nicholas sat at the head of the table, exuding power and confidence. His sharp blue eyes scanned the room as he wrapped up the meeting, his voice smooth yet commanding. "And that concludes today's strategy briefing," he announced. The employees nodded, gathering their notes, ready to leave. But just as the tension in the room began to ease, Nicholas's gaze landed on Emma. And he smirked. "Before we go," he said, his tone casual but laced with something sharp, "I just have one observation." The room stilled. Emma glanced up, her eyes meeting his, calm yet questioning. Nicholas tilted his head slightly, assessing her from head to toe. "We are a company that prides itself on image and professionalism," he mused. "And yet, some employees seem to think dressing for success doesn't apply to them." A few people exchanged nervous glances. Emma's stomach tightened. He was talking about her. She could feel the weight of everyone's eyes, the unspoken judgment in the air. Keeping her expression neutral, she folded her hands together. "I wasn't aware that fashion was a requirement for competence, Mr. Carter." Nicholas chuckled, a low, amused sound. "Oh, it's not. But perception matters, Miss Brooks. And if you're aiming for advancement, you might want to consider looking the part." Emma's grip on her pen tightened. She wanted to fire back with something cutting, something that would wipe that smug expression off his face. But instead she took a breath, squared her shoulders, and met his gaze with unwavering resolve. "I'll keep that in mind," she said evenly. Then she gathered her things and walked out. Nicholas watched her go, his smirk still in place, but for some reason, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just underestimated her. The moment Emma stepped into the break room, her frustration boiled over. She didn't care about fashion. She had worked her way up through sheer effort, through late nights and early mornings. And yet, Nicholas Carter, a man who had never known struggle a day in his life, thought her worth was measured by her clothes. It was infuriating. "Hey, you okay?" Emma turned to see Mia, a fellow employee and one of the few people in the company who didn't buy into the office politics. Emma sighed, rubbing her temple. "Nicholas Carter is an arrogant, insufferable jerk. That's all." Mia grinned. "Tell me something I don't know." Emma chuckled despite herself. Then, Mia's eyes sparkled with an idea. "You're coming to the company gala next weekend, right?" Emma hesitated. "I wasn't planning to." Mia gasped. "No way, you have to come." She leaned in, a mischievous look in her eyes. "Think about it. A chance to prove Mr. Dresses for success wrong. Show him that you don't need his approval, but you can still shut him up." Emma considered it. She didn't want to impress Nicholas. But she did want to remind him that she was just as capable, just as worthy, regardless of what she wore. So she nodded. "All right," she said. "Let's do it." The Carter Enterprises annual gala was an event of sheer luxury. Held in a grand ballroom with chandeliers that sparkled like diamonds, the venue was filled with New York's elite, powerful executives, celebrities, and socialites. Nicholas Carter arrived, dressed in a tailored black tuxedo, his usual air of confidence surrounding him. He greeted investors, made polite conversation, but his mind was elsewhere. He wasn't sure why, but ever since the meeting earlier that week, his thoughts kept drifting back to Emma Brooks. Why? Because she had stood up to him. She hadn't flinched, hadn't looked away. And that was rare. But as far as he was concerned, she wasn't the kind of woman who attended events like these. She had probably skipped it entirely. Or so he thought. Because when she walked through the grand entrance, the entire room fell silent. Nicholas turned instinctively and froze. Emma Brooks, the same woman he had once dismissed for her lack of fashion sense, looked breathtaking. She wore a deep emerald green gown that hugged her curves gracefully, her hair styled in elegant waves. The simple makeup enhanced her features, making her eyes even more captivating. She wasn't trying to look expensive. She just was. Nicholas couldn't take his eyes off her. The same woman he had mocked just days ago now commanded the attention of the entire room. Emma walked with unshaken confidence, a quiet strength in every step. And for the first time, Nicholas Carter was left speechless. Nicholas Carter had always been a man of control, but ever since the gala, he felt completely off balance. He tried to dismiss it at first. It was just a surprise, seeing Emma Brooks transform from a plain, unremarkable employee into a woman who commanded attention effortlessly. But that didn't explain why he couldn't stop thinking about her. He found himself looking for her in the office, wondering what she would wear next, wondering if she would meet his gaze like she had that night. And worst of all, he hated seeing other men notice her. It happened on a Monday morning. Nicholas had arrived at the office early, as always, but this time he spotted something that made his blood simmer. Emma was at the coffee station, laughing at something her coworker, Daniel, had said. Daniel, one of the younger executives, smooth, charming, and far too interested in her. Nicholas clenched his jaw. Since when did she smile like that at Daniel? And why did it bother him so much? He wasn't jealous. That would be ridiculous. Yet, when he saw Daniel place a hand on the small of Emma's back, guiding her away toward the conference room, Nicholas felt an unfamiliar heat rise in his chest. He was distracted the entire morning. When Emma walked past his office later, her confidence as unwavering as ever, Nicholas did something uncharacteristic. He called out to her. "Miss Brooks." Emma stopped, turning toward him. Her expression was unreadable. "Yes, Mr. Carter." For a moment, he had no idea what to say. The usual sharp words, the teasing remarks, they were all on the tip of his tongue. But looking at her now, the woman who had proved him wrong in the most spectacular way possible, he found himself simply saying, "Never mind." Emma raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. She simply nodded and walked away, completely unaffected. And that irritated him even more. Nicholas Carter was not a man used to being ignored. But Emma Brooks, she was making a habit of it. Ever since the gala, she had been polite, professional, but distant. And it was driving him insane. So, he did what he did best. He found a way to confront her. It happened after a department meeting. As employees exited the conference room, Nicholas stepped into Emma's path, blocking her way. "Miss Brooks." She looked up at him, her brown eyes calm but guarded. "Yes, Mr. Carter?" He studied her for a moment. "You've been avoiding me." Emma tilted her head slightly, amused. "I wasn't aware you required my attention outside of work responsibilities." His jaw tightened. Why was she so infuriatingly composed? "I just find it curious," he said smoothly, "that after the gala you suddenly have no interest in speaking to me." Emma gave him a small, unimpressed smile. "I wasn't aware we ever had deep conversations to begin with." Nicholas narrowed his eyes. He had expected her to fluster, to stammer, but she was completely in control. It irritated him. And so, he made a mistake. He scoffed, his voice turning cold. "So was it just for show then? Dressing up to prove a point? Now that everyone's seen you, you don't need the act anymore." The moment the words left his mouth, he regretted them. Because for the first time, Emma's calm facade cracked. Her expression froze. Then, something shifted in her eyes, not anger, but something much colder. Disappointment. Emma let out a quiet, humorless laugh. "I should have known," she murmured. Nicholas frowned. "What?" She met his gaze, her voice steady but sharp. "That no matter what I do, no matter how hard I work, you'll always see me as the same girl you mocked in that meeting." "That's not." "I don't need your approval, Mr. Carter," she cut him off. "And I certainly don't need your opinion on who I am." Then, without another word, she walked past him. Nicholas stood frozen. For the first time in his life, he had no idea how to fix what he had just broken. Nicholas Carter was a man of habit. He liked order, control, and predictability. But ever since that conversation with Emma, the one where she had looked at him with pure disappointment before walking away, he had felt anything but in control. At first, he told himself it didn't matter, that she didn't matter. But then, he started noticing things. Not just the way her confidence never wavered, or the way she held her head high despite everything. No, he started noticing her. How she was the first to arrive at work and the last to leave. How she handled problems without hesitation, often solving crises before they even reached his desk. How employees, even the most junior ones, seemed to gravitate toward her. And then, one afternoon, he saw something that stopped him in his tracks. He had been walking past the break room when he spotted a new intern, nervous, fumbling with a stack of documents. Before the papers could scatter onto the floor, Emma was there. She crouched down, helping the young woman gather them, offering soft words of encouragement. Nicholas watched as Emma guided the intern through the task, her voice calm, her patience unwavering. She wasn't doing it for recognition. She wasn't seeking approval. She simply cared. Something twisted in his chest. Had he been so blinded by her appearance that he had failed to see who she truly was? For the first time, Nicholas wondered, had he been wrong about Emma all along? It started as a routine business dinner. A group of elite executives had gathered at a five-star restaurant for negotiations, and Nicholas had only half listened, his attention drifting somewhere else. Or rather, someone else. Emma. She had been invited to the dinner as well. Her recent contributions in the company had earned her a seat at the table. Nicholas had expected her to stay quiet, to simply observe. But instead, she had held her own. She debated, she presented. She spoke with intelligence, with wit, with a quiet confidence that captivated the entire room. And apparently she had captivated someone else too. Across the table, one of their business partners, a well-dressed, charming man named Victor Blackwell, was watching Emma with undeniable interest. Nicholas noticed immediately. The way Victor leaned closer. The way his eyes never left her. And then, the final straw. Victor raised his glass toward Emma and said, "Miss Brooks, I must say, you're quite impressive. How about dinner? Just the two of us." The entire table fell silent. Emma hesitated for half a second, not out of flattery, but because she was caught off guard. And before she could even answer, Nicholas spoke. "She's busy." His voice was sharp, firm, laced with something unmistakably possessive. Emma's head snapped toward him. "Excuse me?" Nicholas stood abruptly, reaching for her wrist and pulling her to her feet. "We need to talk," he muttered, guiding her toward the terrace. Once outside, Emma yanked her arm free. What the hell was that? Nicholas ran a hand through his hair, clearly agitated. "You think you can just go to dinner with anyone?" Emma crossed her arms, an amused smirk playing on her lips. "Are you seriously telling me who I can and can't have dinner with?" His jaw tightened. "I'm saying Blackwell isn't interested in business, and you know it." She raised an eyebrow. "Why do you care?" Silence. Nicholas looked away for half a second, just long enough for her to see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "I don't want you to be taken advantage of," he said finally. Emma studied him, her gaze searching. There was something unspoken in his words, something deeper, and it hit her. "Oh my God," she whispered, realization dawning. "You're jealous." Nicholas stiffened. "I am not." Emma laughed, a soft, knowing laugh. For the first time, Nicholas Carter looked flustered. She took a step closer, tilting her head slightly. "You totally are." Nicholas gritted his teeth. "Go back inside, Brooks." But as Emma turned to leave, she couldn't wipe the smirk off her face. And Nicholas. He let out a quiet curse under his breath. Because he knew she was right. He was jealous. And he had no idea what to do about it. After that night, things shifted. Nicholas was still Nicholas, still arrogant, still impossible at times. But something was different. He no longer threw careless insults her way. Instead, he started noticing when she was overwhelmed with work. And he helped. Not in obvious ways, but in small ones. Like the time she had been drowning in paperwork, and somehow, half of it mysteriously disappeared, processed and approved ahead of schedule. Or the time her laptop crashed, and before she could even submit a tech request, a new one arrived on her desk. At first, she didn't want to believe it had anything to do with him. But then, one evening she caught him. She had forgotten her phone in the conference room and went back to retrieve it, only to find Nicholas standing by her desk, casually placing a wrapped sandwich beside her computer. He hadn't noticed her yet. And for a brief moment, she saw it. Not the ruthless CEO. Not the arrogant businessman. Just a man who, despite his best efforts, was starting to care. Something warm and unfamiliar settled in her chest. Maybe Nicholas Carter wasn't entirely terrible. Nicholas Carter had never been afraid of anything. Deals worth billions? Negotiations with ruthless businessmen? Controlling an entire empire? Easy. But this was terrifying. He had spent the last few weeks watching Emma Brooks slip past every wall he had carefully built around himself. And worse, he let her. He noticed her in ways he never should. How she bit her lip when she was deep in thought. How she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was frustrated. How the sight of her, the sound of her laughter, the way she challenged him, the way she was simply Emma, felt like the only thing in his life that wasn't calculated. And that scared the hell out of him. because he knew how this story ended. Love wasn't a luxury someone like him could afford. He had seen what it did. His parents' marriage was proof enough. His father had put the company first. His mother had begged for more time, more attention, more of him. And in the end, she left. Nicholas had promised himself he would never let that happen to him. He would never let love make him weak. So he made a decision. A stupid, painful decision. He would push her away before he lost control completely. Emma had been walking toward the conference room when she heard his voice. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop. But then she heard her name. And she stopped. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, Nicholas was speaking with Victor Blackwell, the same business partner who had asked her to dinner. Victor let out a chuckle. "So, Nicholas, rumor has it you've taken quite an interest in Miss Brooks." Emma's heart pounded. She waited, hoped, for Nicholas to deny it. To say something, anything, that would prove her suspicions wrong. But then, his voice came. Flat, unfeeling, cold. "I don't have time for distractions like that." Emma's breath hitched. Victor raised an eyebrow. "Distractions." Nicholas sighed. "She's good at her job, but that's all. Relationships are a waste of time." A sharp, hollow pain pierced through Emma's chest. She had been a fool. She had let herself believe that Nicholas Carter, the arrogant CEO who once mocked her, who had spent years looking down on her, could actually care. That he could be more. But she had been wrong. He had never seen her as anything more than a passing amusement. Something temporary. Something replaceable. She turned and walked away before she could hear anything else. Because she had heard enough. Emma didn't go home that night. She went straight to her desk. Straight to her resignation letter. And by morning, she was gone. Nicholas Carter had never cared when people left. Employees came and went. Business partners switched alliances. Lovers drifted away. It was how life worked. But when Emma Brooks walked out of his life, something inside him cracked. At first, he told himself it was nothing. She was just an employee. Nothing more. But the first morning without her at the office, he felt it. The emptiness. The way his coffee tasted bitter without her sarcastic remarks in the break room. The way meetings felt dull without her challenging his opinions. The way his office felt colder, quieter, lifeless. Work became meaningless. Numbers blurred together. Profits no longer excited him. Because what was the point? He had spent his entire life building an empire. But now, he had no one to share it with. And then, it hit him. He had been wrong. About everything. Emma wasn't just another employee. She wasn't a distraction. She was the one person who had ever truly seen him. And he had let her go. He couldn't let that be the end of their story. So he did the only thing that made sense. He went after her. It had taken some digging, but Nicholas finally found her. Emma had started working with a non-profit organization that helped young women in business. And tonight, she was the keynote speaker at a charity gala. Nicholas didn't hesitate. He arrived at the event dressed in his usual tailored suit, but for the first time in his life, he wasn't here as CEO Nicholas Carter. He was just a man in love. The moment he stepped inside, his eyes found her. Emma stood on stage, poised and confident, speaking passionately to the audience. She was brilliant. She was breathtaking. And Nicholas knew he had never wanted anything more than he wanted her. So as soon as she finished speaking, before the applause even faded, he made his move. Nicholas walked straight onto the stage. The room fell silent. Emma turned, her eyes widening in shock. "Nicholas." He took a deep breath, gripping the microphone. "I was wrong," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Emma stared at him, her heartbeat racing. Nicholas swallowed hard. He had never done anything like this before. But for her, he would do anything. "I judged you for the way you dressed," he admitted. "I dismissed you because I was too arrogant to see who you truly were." Emma's breath hitched. Nicholas took a step closer. He didn't care that they had an audience. "I thought I didn't have time for love," he said. "I thought it would make me weak." His voice dropped to a whisper. "But then you left. And I realized the only thing that makes me weak is losing you." Emma's eyes glistened. "I love you, Emma," Nicholas said, his voice raw, real. "I don't care about the past. I don't care about anything except you." The crowd held their breath. And then, Emma spoke. Emma had spent weeks trying to forget him, trying to convince herself that Nicholas Carter didn't deserve her. But standing here, looking into his eyes, seeing the truth, the vulnerability, the love, she knew. He meant it. This wasn't the cold, arrogant man she had met months ago. This was someone who had changed. For her. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She took a slow, shaky breath and smiled. "You idiot," she whispered. Nicholas let out a breathless laugh. "Is that a yes?" Emma nodded. "Yes." The room erupted in applause. But Nicholas didn't hear any of it, because in the next moment, Emma was in his arms, pressing her lips to his ineffaçat. Sup every word she couldn't say. And for the first time in his life, Nicholas Carter knew. He had finally found something worth more than all the money in the world. Nicholas Carter was a man who once thought love was a weakness. But now, he knew better. Because now, he was standing in the middle of a breathtaking garden, surrounded by soft golden lights and fresh white roses, waiting for the only woman who had ever mattered. Tonight was the night. He had spent the past year earning her trust, proving his love, not just through words, but through actions. And now, he was ready to take the next step. Emma entered the garden, her eyes widening in surprise. "Nicholas, what is this?" she asked softly, taking in the fairy lights, the candlelit path, and the intimate table set for two. Nicholas smiled, taking her hand. "Just a small dinner," he said, leading her toward the table. She gave him a knowing look. Nicholas Carter doesn't do small anything. He chuckled, but there was nervousness in his eyes. They ate, they laughed, they talked, but Nicholas could barely focus. Because he was about to change both of their lives forever. As the night deepened, he finally stood, reaching into his pocket. Emma's breath caught. Nicholas dropped to one knee, opening a small velvet box. Inside was a stunning diamond ring, simple yet elegant, just like her. For the first time in his life, Nicholas Carter looked at someone not as a business investment, not as a deal to be won, but as his future. "Emma Brooks," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I used to think love was a distraction. But then you walked into my life, and suddenly nothing else made sense." Emma's eyes glistened with tears. Nicholas took a deep breath. "You changed me. You made me better. And now I can't imagine a single day without you." A soft gasp escaped her lips. "So, Emma," he continued, his heart pounding, "will you marry me?" For a moment there was only silence. Then, with tears streaming down her face, Emma let out a choked laugh. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, "Yes, Nicholas. 1,000 times yes." Nicholas let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, slipping the ring onto her finger before pulling her into the deepest, most heartfelt kiss of his life. And in that moment, he knew. He had finally found his forever. 1 year later, their wedding was a dream. Not because of the grand venue or the extravagant details, but because it was real. Because when Emma walked down the aisle, her eyes locked on his, Nicholas knew he had never been more certain of anything in his life. But beyond the wedding, what mattered most was what they built together. With Emma's passion and Nicholas's resources, they launched the Brooks Carter Initiative, a program dedicated to helping young women build their careers in business, giving them mentorship and opportunities that Emma had once fought so hard to earn on her own. Their days were filled with purpose. Their nights were filled with laughter, quiet conversations, and love. And every morning, when Nicholas woke up next to the woman who had changed his life, he knew. He had finally found something money could never buy. Happiness, love, and a future worth everything. Nicholas Carter thought that success was everything. That power, wealth, and control were all that mattered. But then came Emma Brooks, the woman who proved him wrong. She wasn't just another employee. She wasn't just a passing distraction. She was his greatest challenge, his greatest lesson, his greatest love. And in the end, it wasn't power or money that changed his life. It was her. Now they stand together, not just as husband and wife, but as partners in life, in love, and in purpose. Because love isn't just about finding someone, it's about choosing them every single day. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss another heartwarming, emotional tale, because sometimes the most unexpected stories lead to the most unforgettable love. Love has the power to change everything, if we're brave enough to let it.